This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden, and joining me is the man who's got a little extra pep in his step, Michael J. Facci. Facci. The Pacers take down the Kings 111-109 behind a great second half comeback. The Pacers were down by 16, but they found a way, and we're going to dive into all of that tonight. But man, what a game, and what about some clutch shot making for the Pacers here at the end, and then some free throws by Aaron Nesmith, really icing this game, putting the game away.
Save their best for last. I felt that it was the reserves at times, like an Obi Toppin or a Jarace Walker who played really well. Aaron Nesmith, obviously big game, but you're wondering when is Haliburton and Siakam going to step up? And I felt like Haliburton did what he's done kind of all season, saved his best for the fourth quarter when needed. He was clutch, 11 points in the fourth, part of a big run for Indiana to be able to capture that lead and never let it up. This was a game that after the first quarter, it was all Kings in the second and the third. Love to see that type of comeback at home, just where you feel comfortable and you grind out that W.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would just push back a little bit on that because I would say in the third quarter, the Pacers did turn it around, right? They were down 76-60.
Yep,
And they
correct.
cut it to 5 points by the end of the third quarter.
It was big.
So, and then to start the fourth, the Kings hit like three threes in a row and they got the lead back up. And you're thinking, oh no, is this is this about to be like the Pacers had their comeback, they had their chance, but they couldn't get over the hump. It was multiple guys had a chance there to like tie the game up with a three, and they just kept missing it.
Could
Then the
not hit
Kings
that
went on
moment.
a run, and then you mentioned it. They go back to Haliburton and kind of run that lineup. I think TJ McConnell subbed out with like 7 minutes and 35 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Pacers kind of played some different lineups there, here and there, but for the most part, it was like a six-man rotation with Haliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Obi Toppin, Pascal, and Jarace Walker. And so there's a lot of guys we can probably start with here and talk about their game, but I think that the story of the game was the Pacers in that third quarter saying, okay, we've tried the Thomas Bryant, Tony Bradley experience with Sabonis. It's not really working out for us. Let's change the game up. Let's go small ball with Obi Toppin at the five. And the floodgates opened, and the Pacers found a way to get their offense going because I felt like Facci for the beginning of this half, there was no flow to the game whatsoever. But this allowed the Pacers to kind of play that flow, and I think this is what helped them, get back into this game and eventually win it.
It was great. I mean, look, Obi Toppin had some moments. It's crazy. He has, I think it's like now 5 games maybe this season where he's hit five or more threes, but it feels like a lot of them have been in the past, the month of March. So he had a good time to get in the flow. Jarris he's really building some consistency. 15 points in this game. Jarris now has 3 straight games in double figures. I've mentioned before his career high is 17. In 2 of the last 3 games, he's had 15 and 16. So he's playing well. He's hitting the three ball. It's been great to see. But yeah, you mentioned that small ball lineup was really big because Sabonis was really just kind of feasting in the first half or through 3 quarters. Sabonis had 23 points and 13 boards. In that fourth quarter, he has just 2 points and 3 rebounds. Indiana really kind of wiped him out from being a major threat. And I thought that was a big part of Indiana being able to get back in this game because obviously you mentioned no Miles Turner. Indiana tried to throw a few different things at him. They had no answer in the first half.
Yeah, Facci, when Obi Toppin has four made three-pointers in a game or more, the Pacers are undefeated.
I love that. Let's get this man the rock. And he's had some good looks at it, and he's making opposing defenses pay. On the flip side, when you talked about all those threes that they have there open, part of them is like, man, I feel like, and I hate to kick a guy while he's down, but we're talking about this. But Ben Shepherd's had
Yeah.
some looks, like wide open looks. And I felt like he's had those moments where it's like, for the lead, oh man, it's like, if you could just hit one of those, it has people kind of ease off a little bit. But it felt like Indiana, every time they trailed by one or two, they just kept taking threes and they just kept missing them until Haliburton took that step back three, took the first lead, and then Siakam hits that next three. And Indiana never had to look back, despite the Kings making it very close in the end. They kept hitting their shots and fouling, and this ends up being a 2 point game. But it was just, man, this was a fun fourth quarter to be able to have this type of comeback.
Yeah, the Pacers were not good from three, Facci. They were 4, I believe, of 14 in the fourth quarter, if I'm looking at this right here. 2, 4, 6, 8,
And
10.
that's
Yeah,
right because
14.
they were 2 of 12 before they hit those the Haliburton and Siakam threes.
Yeah.
So 2 of 12 is gross.
Yeah, 4-14. Toppin hit one. Siakam hit that one. Haliburton hit the go-ahead one. And Jarace Walker hit one.
Hmm.
Ben Shepherd, 0 of 2. Aaron Nesmith, 0 of 1. Jarace goes 1 of 3. Nimhard, 0 of 2. It felt like every time the Pacers needed one, Tyrese like really airballed that one that he shot too.
That was crazy. That
And
was
he said it
bad.
felt good in the post-game media session. He's like, I'm not gonna lie, it felt good, but it was way left. And then like Shep, like it just feels like every Shep shot, like I'm just yelling brick. I'm just like, I'm not
Yeah, I'm losing
expecting
the
any
confidence.
shot from him to go in. I think it's almost like a miracle if it does now. It's just like I don't know what's got into him, and the shot doesn't look bad when it comes off his hand. It's just nowhere close. Siakam has been pretty bad from three as of late, but his three was massive. And then you see the little dance that him and Obi Toppin had after
Hmm.
that, which was fun. I'm going to call it the Siakam shuffle. I don't know what
I
else to
like it.
call it, but I guess that he was the one that kind of told Tyrese and Obi about this little dance. So Tyrese said he's going to learn it. So
Yep.
I'm excited for that. But I just want to stick with Toppin here for a second because I just feel like we don't give him enough flowers
You don't.
when he deserves it, right? I mean, I've been critical of Obi Toppin. There's been some really rough stretches of Obi Toppin this year,
Trust.
and I think that they've found something here with him at the small ball five.
Hmm.
This is something I'm expecting to be a little bit more present in the playoffs because I just, as decent as Thomas Bryant and Tony Bradley were tonight, I just don't trust either of them in a playoff series. And as much as Thomas Bryant's been a fun story this year, and he was really good when he first came to the team, I think that the way Obi's been playing, man, like he really, really has been stepping up his game as of late. I like that they're giving him more run and like allowing him to play more like longer stretches of game time versus like short stints here and there. And the last thing I'll say about this, my friend Lincoln Anderson was at the Minnesota game when Obi Toppin hit the game winner. Guess where Lincoln Anderson was tonight? He was in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So when I looked over, I said, "You are the lucky charm to Obi Toppin. We got to get you at all the playoff games." He lives in Minnesota. I said, "You're gonna have to find some tickets to Detroit, to Indiana, because we need you, and Obi Toppin needs you. So you can't let us down, Lincoln."
Hey, he's I guess like the anti-Foch or whatever it may be. I mean, everybody wants him in the building, compared to me when they're trying to put a restraining order on me. But
How is
whatever.
this about you? I didn't even bring up the Facci curse.
It just felt like I was like, man, must be nice to be like, we need you to get tickets to go to Detroit or Milwaukee or this. Hey, I'd love that. But
Stay the
look,
heck away, Facci. Nobody wants to see your face, okay?
yeah, I mean, sheesh. But anyway, for Obi Toppin, I just feel like we're starting to see him look like the guy that looked like before last year's playoffs. Like when Obi went into the playoffs, he was balling out, and it felt like he was very consistent. And we're starting to see that now that it's like, hey, this is a guy that is stringing together. Let's see, 6 straight games in double figure points.
Yeah.
So it's great. Some of those games are 20 points against Minnesota. Some 15 against Washington, 19 against Sacramento. I mean, this is great. I'm looking at this right now, and it looks like when Obi Toppin has scored 13 or more this month, Indiana has won every single game.
Yeah.
So, and it's the games that he has where he's not scoring that much, like 3 points against the Hawks, that's a loss. 9 points against Atlanta, that's a loss. 10 points against Chicago, that's a loss. 8 points against Milwaukee, that's a loss. Like, so for the most part, it's like when Obi's giving you, like I said, 13 or more, you're winning those games. When he's giving you double digits, that's really when the most part, it's like Indiana's getting that lift off the bench. So love to see, what we're getting out of Obi because we talked about whose minutes are going to get cut come playoff time. We said, well, what if there are scenarios where Obi's only playing 10 or 15 minutes? On nights like the past week or two, it looks like he deserves to play the minutes that he's going to get. But it's Thomas Bryant that you mentioned before. Yes, feel good story early on. Lately, there hasn't really been that type of play that you could write home about for Thomas Bryant. So maybe there's a scenario where he's only playing 5 to 10 minutes in the playoffs, in certain games. So that remains to be seen. But it's like kind of the stock up, stock down of over the last 2 weeks. Jarace has done a lot to elevate his stock. I think Ben Shepherd's
Yeah.
stock has gone down. Thomas Bryant's stock's gone down. And on the other side, Obi Toppin's stock has gone up.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of close out our conversation here with Obi before we get into a player awards and talk about him later. I want to just say this. It does make you feel better about the optionality you have at the backup five if Miles, can't go. Like tonight, Miles Turner. We didn't even bring this up. He was sick, didn't play in the game. Ben Mathern out with a sore calf again, so he didn't play. So you're already down two of your top six guys. And so now you're going to need somebody like Obi Toppin to step up and play extended minutes because they started Thomas Bryant and they went early to Tony Bradley, and I thought they were okay, right? But it just makes you feel better. The only thing I'm a little bit concerned about is the rim protection with Obi Toppin at the five, and they ran some lineups there with Obi at the five and Pascal at the four. But if you noticed, the Kings were guarding Pascal with Domas and putting a wing on Obi Toppin. The reason I like Obi at the five is almost when they go even smaller at times and play Nesmith at the four, because when you're allowing Sabonis to guard Siakam, like Siakam's not been shooting the ball particularly well, and so he hit the big one, so you got to give him a lot of credit. But like even when he took it, I was very nervous about the shot just because of how inconsistent he's been from beyond the arc. And I was like, man, I really wish this was Toppin shooting this, just because Toppin's been shooting the cover off the basketball. So I love the way that he's been playing. His confidence is through the roof, and it feels like he's really just I really do believe that the trade stuff was kind of getting to him a little bit. There's a ton of rumblings out there, and that's probably when he played his worst, was heading up to the trade deadline. So I'm sure there were some internal conversations, like maybe we're listening to calls, and he wants to be settled in Indiana. He obviously likes it here and has fit in well with this team. So kudos to him. But let me ask you this, Facci. If I told you these two numbers, would you know what I'm talking about? 46 and 12.
46 and 12. It's got to be the Pacers record when something happened.
It's actually not. It's the difference in the bench tonight between the Pacers bench and the Kings bench.
Wow, the Kings bench had nothing going on.
No.
Absolutely nothing.
That is why when we say that the Pacers' depth is their strength, this is why. In a game where you score 111 points, which is not that many, and nearly half those points come from your bench, they were able to just have that extra energy down the stretch where the Kings were just complete isolation basketball for the entire 18 minutes of the game. It was like, who's going to try to score on their own this time, where the Pacers, constant ball movement, and they had some good looks from three, but they just didn't hit them until the end of the game. But I just feel like that the way the bench came in and provided so much, you've been hinting at it, and I know you're ready to just, take the top off the bottle here. Jarace Walker, unbelievable. So tell me about Jarace tonight.
Truly has. I mean, this man's just shooting the ball well, but I also feel like he's just active. Like he's getting into a groove. Like he had 2 steals, but there's also, one that was nearly a steal in the first half. He got his hand on the ball. It was deflected. The Kings ended up getting it back. Like I feel like he's just like gaining that confidence. I know they talked about, kind of post game how Aaron Nesmith was able to relate to, what Jarace went through. Aaron wasn't playing much in Boston those first few years. And Rick even gave Jarace some credit of being able to stay ready, and he has. Like, there's been times in the beginning of the year where he was playing consistently to then not really playing at all. Man, I just love what I've seen from Jarace, and it's like it shows like on nights like this. Like, 15 points off the bench. Indiana wins this game by 2. It's like you probably don't win this game without Jarace Walker hitting some of the shots that he did. He had 12 points through 3 quarters. It was great to see. So I love the rhythm that he's getting into, and I don't want him to stop. Like, can we find that way that he can be able to consistently get the 20-plus minutes he's been getting? Because look at the last 3 games when he has played well. Against Washington, 25 minutes. Against OKC, 27 minutes. Against Sacramento, 22. But the previous 3 games, it was 8 minutes versus the Lakers, 2 minutes versus Minnesota, 7 minutes against Brooklyn. Like that's nothing to work with. So we've really seen a switch flipped, and I'm hoping that it lasts.
Yeah, that fourth quarter against the Lakers really did just open up a window of opportunities for him to continue to kind of prove what he can do. And Rick Carlisle had this to say after the game. He said his maturity is beyond his years right now. He's figured some things out about being a professional. He's kept himself ready. He's showing you right now why he was such a high pick for us. And I understand the frustration from fans because he wasn't getting the playing time or the playing opportunities that fans wanted, but he's getting it now and he's making the most of it, right? So I absolutely love the way that he's coming here with the confidence. And it's not even just the shot making that he's doing, which is great, but there was a multiple times throughout this game where he was guarding DeMar DeRozan. And I asked Rick Carlisle about this after the game just because I was curious how Rick thought he did defensively on a guy like DeRozan. I mean, this is a 16-year veteran. This is a guy that's been a great scorer in the
5,000
league.
points.
And,
Yep.
Rick even said, look, there were times when, he got beat by a veteran, crafty guy. But, the thing that I noticed about it was Jarace does not bite on pump fakes. And he has really been disciplined about not giving that up. So, absolutely love it. And I think it was just a special game for Jarace to have this opportunity because the way that he came in and just immediately impacted that first quarter, they needed it. They needed it bad, especially when they brought in all those subs at once. And that team that had got a 16-6 lead gave it right back up.
Yeah.
They needed Jarace to kind of keep him steady, like you said. And my goodness, I thought he was good on both ends of the floor.
He had 7 points in that first quarter on 3 of 4 shooting. So it's like the impact, was felt. I mean, that led the Pacers in scoring in the first. So that was good to see. And this was kind of an ugly first half. I mean, you mentioned Pacers go up by 10. All of a sudden, the Kings went on like a 20-4 run. Indiana was sloppy. They had 7 turnovers in that first quarter. Haliburton had 4 turnovers at half. If Haliburton had 4 turnovers in a game, that's surprising lately. But to have 4 turnovers by halftime was very uncharacteristic of Tyrese Haliburton. But Indiana did a great job in that second half. So 9 turnovers in the first half of the Pacers, just 3 in the second. So they protected the ball. They hit all of their free throws. They go perfect 13 of 13 from the line, with Aaron Nesmith going 9 of 9 himself. So Nesmith shooting 9 of Indiana's 13 free throws, hits them all. You win by 2. The margin for error in this game was just too thin. Indiana had to play a really good, safe second half, and I feel like that is exactly what they did by protecting the rock, making their free throws, and all that stuff added up to a Pacers win.
You said the team had 12 total turnovers.
12.
Tyrese Haliburton had 5.
I know.
in
How
this game.
crazy is that? I mean, 5. That was taking him like 5 games at times, over a week.
He's done it 3 times this year. I looked it up on Basketball Reference. He did it 2 times in a week, and we probably forget because he did it against Golden
Season?
State
Okay.
and Philadelphia
Yeah, Philly, I remember that.
in that stretch there. But whether you like this stat or not, Indiana's undefeated when Tyrese Haliburton has 5 turnovers or more.
I mean, hey, look,
in
that's
spite of the turnovers they're winning.
Yeah, I don't want everyone to be like, come on, Tyrese, turn it over. You know our numbers when you do.
Hey, if you reach 5, baby, we're going to win.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just one of those weird stats that goes against everything that you know. But what if I told you this? What if I told you that Pascal Siakam only hit 1 shot in the second half, but it ended up being one of the biggest? He hits that 3-pointer that puts Indiana up 5, and at that point you go, wow, yeah, I didn't realize it. So it's another game where Indiana was able to overcome struggles from Siakam. 4 of 15 from the field, just 3 rebounds, and you win. Whew, that's just one of those games that he will be better and everything will be all right moving forward. The last 2 games, though, 4 of 15 and 4 of 11. Not his best performances by any means, but a win is a win, and for that, you got to be happy with it.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the Pacers getting the win. I am not loving the Pascal Siakam experience as of late.
I'm not right now. Nope.
It's tough. And I don't know if you noticed this or not, but there was one play in the third quarter, maybe the fourth, but he went in to guard Sabonis when I think he was giving Toppin a break. And instead of just playing defense, he just squared his shoulder and just waited for his Sabonis to ram into him. I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing? That is not good defense. And he's just been up and down. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I know I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow. Tomorrow with Kyle Taylor. We dive into the Siakam, struggles as of late. And tonight, I think once again, you realize even when he is struggling, why he is so pivotal to this team, because he just makes big shots. And you have to give him a lot of credit for doing that. He's not, to me, the biggest shot maker. He's not as big of a shot maker as Tyrese Haliburton is. I feel like Tyrese has really just upped his game probably the last month and a half or so in terms of shot making abilities, Facci. But overall, the Pacers, I know people are slowly starting to come around and realize maybe the Pacers are better than we thought they were. I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast on Monday on my drive for work, And one of the most interesting things they were talking about was like, Simmons is like, I think Cade's like a top 10, 12 guy. And I'm like, I don't know if I agree with Cade Cunningham being top 10 or
That's a
12.
little, that's way
But
too
he
much.
did say that in a playoff series against the Pacers, like, they'll never have the top player on the court in a series, but like Ryan Russillo kind of pushed back and said, well, this is the only team outside of Boston and Cleveland that has a winning record against teams that are in the upper echelon of the league. So I think
Fair.
Indiana is just going to like they're right in the spot they want to be in. They're going to probably have home court advantage come playoff
I
time. They
think
still got to
so.
take care of business.
And close. Yep.
But this was one of those like teeter-totter games that could have gone either way. You feel
Yes.
pretty good about three more victories with Washington, Utah, and Charlotte. And then obviously, I just think that if you get home court, people really aren't expecting much out of you. If you win a playoff series against Detroit, I don't think anybody's gonna be shocked by that. But this is a good spot for them to be in because they're gonna be counted out, and they always kind of rise above
True.
their expectations. So, it's good that they're getting a little bit of love nationally, but they've been playing really good basketball, and like Russillo said, like the last 50 games or so, they've been like top 12 in defense. So you have to give them the credit where it's due.
Yeah, you really do. Look, that 10 and 15 start feels like a lifetime ago. I think you want this team to get respect. You don't want it to go to their head. You don't because I feel like coming into the regular season, I felt like I don't know, maybe Indiana had gotten a little bit comfortable with the success that they had, and I think they got humbled by how bad things were in the beginning of the year. I just crunched some numbers on Siakam while you were going through some of his struggles. Over his last 5 games, he's averaging 12.8 points per game on just under 42% shooting. That is
Mm.
a drastic fall off for a guy who on the season is averaging over 20 points per game, with shooting lights out from 3-point land and 52% from the field. So the struggles are real right now, but nonetheless, Indiana's still taking care of business. So I think if they can continue to push forward, like you mentioned, the schedule is winnable. Obviously Detroit's coming off of a loss recently. The Bucks have definitely had their struggles lately, but the Bucks play a Suns team that we know now Kevin Durant will be out for at least a week. So things are going to get intense, but I think that if Indiana can just stay focused on themselves, getting home court would be a major accomplishment in this type of season and something that I remember when things were getting lower. We getting, the 10 and 15 area. We started being like, could Indiana even be a top 6 seed? And
Yeah.
we started having some doubts. Like, I feel like they could still be that, but maybe the 6 seed
Yeah.
to be at this point and really feel good about locking up home court and being the fourth, man, it just shows that like it's a long NBA season and anything could happen.
The Pacers play 9 home games in the month of March, and they went 8-1.
Woo! You
The
gotta
only
love that.
loss,
That Lakers game.
a tip in
Man.
at the buzzer.
Yep,
I
I
mean,
know.
and that game, I mean, that could have been easily 9-0 at home.
That would have been a statement because that would have I feel like that would have started a little bit of a rumble of like you don't want to see Indiana at home. And we saw
No.
what they did in the playoffs last year at home. They protected home court. You could not win in Indiana other than, Boston in the conference finals. And even those were some tough games. So, hey, I think home court, that's where it comes in handy. I think this Pacers team is better on the road this year than they were last year. So you feel like it doesn't have to be so night and day. But at the same point, things just they become intense in the playoffs. We've seen those certain things like whoever's at home is going to win the game, or whoever's going to win the rebounding battle might win this one. Like it just everyone needs to step their game up, and you can't say that this Pacers team is not battle tested because this is just about the same exact unit from last year that went to the conference finals. So you feel good running it back. Matherin's the guy who hasn't had any a taste of the playoffs yet, and we're excited to have him in the mix because that's obviously what Indiana was lacking last year. So hey, as long as you can stay healthy right now, I think Indiana's on the right track.
Yeah, and Jarace is another guy that hasn't really got any minutes either. We'll see if he does, but like, one of the steals that he had in this game like completely changed the momentum of the game around, and he can do that. And his ability just to hit shots over guys. I mean, we've talked about Jarace a lot on this podcast already, but you cannot say enough great things about him. And for everybody that's been kind of upset, I guess you could say, for his lack of playing time and his lack of minutes, we'll dive into that a lot more with Kyle Taylor on tomorrow's episode. But I'll just say this, that I think that everybody's journey is different. And the fact that Jarace has not hung his head so low, right? He's been able to kind of just, fight through some of the frustrations of not playing, but when his name was called, he answered. And there was times earlier this year when he didn't do that. So just to see the maturity of him in terms of being ready as a pro and never knowing when his name's going to be called, but his name was finally called and he rose to the occasion, and now he has basically, put himself ahead of the rotation in front of Ben Shepherd.
He
And
has.
look, we can talk about Ben Shepherd, and I feel like the conversation on social media about Ben Shepherd is a little bit unfair,
Yeah, it's
right?
got negative. I could definitely admit, I've gotten a little bit negative as well. It's
Well, I
hard.
think
They're
the difference
compared
between you though is you're not being negative or you're being nasty. You're being critical.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. I am not being hateful or he doesn't deserve this. No, no, I'm calling it like this man's struggling from an offensive
Yeah.
standpoint. He is struggling, and the problem is he's struggling at the same exact time that Jarace is elevating his game.
Mhm.
So, unfairly, fairly, however you want to call it, being in the same draft class, and you're going to be compared to each other. And I think that year one. It was all Ben Shepherd shining while Jarace couldn't get the playing time. Now I feel like it's like these guys are fighting neck and neck for who's going to be the ninth, 10th man in the rotation, whatever it may be. And there's not enough playing time for 10 guys in the playoffs. So someone's got to get their minutes cut. And right now, Jarace is playing arguably his best ball right now when it's getting down towards the end of the season. And I think Shepard is playing, unfortunately, his worst ball while it's getting towards the end of the season.
I don't want to put this, comparison on Shep completely, but it does feel very reminiscent to Chris Duarte. Chris Duarte was
Yeah,
awesome his first
rookie
year
year. He really
and made you feel like, man, he could be a long-term piece for this future, like the next, the Dominican Clay Thompson, that kind of thing.
said.
Hey, we've heard some comparisons for Clay Thompson to Ben Shepherd, right?
Clay Thompson seems to be a common comparison for Pacer players, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's hard
Older
to live up.
veteran college guards that get drafted, right? But he had a great playoff run last year, and I feel like there were times when he was very, solid this year, but that's how I kind of felt about Duarte. But then eventually he just kind of dropped off, and it's like Duarte quit making his shots, and it's like, what happened to Duarte? Like, he was unbelievable. He couldn't miss. Now I think that Duarte's peak was clearly higher than Ben Shepherd's peak.
Oh yeah, opening
And
night.
that's also the difference between a
Awesome.
lottery pick and a guy that was drafted 26. But still, like, I don't think Ben Shepherd's this bum that I've been seeing on social media. Like, I think Ben Shepherd is still a very capable basketball player. I mean, if
Absolutely.
you want to be critical, nothing wrong with that. If you want to say that Ben Shepherd, his like I've even said it, like that's enough Ben Shepherd minutes. Like he needs to,
Yeah.
there needs to be a shift here in terms of who's getting these minutes because he's not really earning them, in my personal opinion, if he's not able to perform at the level that they need him to perform at. So you have to change it up, and I'm glad they finally decided to do that. It just took them a little bit longer than I think a lot of us would expect and want, but you got to give Carlisle credit where credit's due because he decided, you know what, I'm going to throw Jarris in this Lakers game. I'm going to see what he can do. And Jarris changed the game for the better, and now look at him. That little moment there where he was able to kind of shine in 8 minutes of play against the Lakers has given him the confidence to go out there and play loose, play free. And that is not something we saw from Jarris early on. So um, it's tough, like you said, when you have two guys that you like. These are good kids. You're rooting for them. You want them to do well. But when one person's not performing, it's time that they, ride the bench for a little bit and, learn from it and grow from it. And, maybe sitting out some of the rotation when the guys are fully healthy will give them some perspective, and hopefully they can mature and be ready when their name's called. And maybe that break is just what they needed to kind of get their mind, refocused.
Also, what about how we talked about how do you respond when things don't go your way for like Jarace and the end of the Lakers game, kind of ball watching, LeBron tips it in. Jarace has responded with some of
Yeah.
his best play. So that's been great to see that has not had that lingering type of effect on him. He's really played well. He's being consistent. And I feel like there's not been minutes lately that you've been like, oh, get this guy off the court. Or he's not ready. It's like, no, look, he's still learning. He's growing. And yeah, he'll make mistakes just like any other player will, but his upside is it's real. It's real, and you want to see more of it. So I think that if Indiana keep their foot on the gas, They're playing really good basketball. They closed out a month of March that started pretty rough. Obviously, Haliburton missing 3 games, that random 3-game losing streak that was very unfortunate. But then they rattled off, a lot of good wins, and I think that we should be happy with the month of March that we saw. But in reality, it's all about what are you going to do in April. It
Yep.
really is, because half of April, the regular season, the other half is the playoffs. And if we're looking at anything like what we saw last year, man, the month of May was the biggest. So the biggest months of the Pacers season are yet ahead.
They definitely are, Facci. So we are glad that y'all joined us for today's episode here of the recap. Anything that we haven't done, I think we forgot to do player awards, Facci.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and do that. MVP of the game, who you giving it to?
MVP of the game. Nesmith had the biggest performance, with 24 points. You could go in a different direction. You could put him for, clutch. But actually, I don't know, man.
I think he deserves clutch or defensive player of the game.
I think we go defensive, because also you can make an argument for clutch that Haliburton pouring in 11 in the fourth is like
Yeah,
that.
that's fair.
So let's go. Okay, so let's go Haliburton with the clutch. Aaron Nesmith with Ron Artest defensive player of the game.
Of the game. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, he was guarding DeRozan there at the end. I mean, DeRozan still got some big shots off, but like still to be able to do that and then go down there and perform offensively, like he wasn't shooting the ball well. Like 1 of 8 from 3, 7 of 16 is not the level that we're expecting from Aaron Nesmith from what we've seen so far since the All-Star break. But
No, not at all.
the 9 free throws were huge. He probably should have got 11 because there was one attempt where he tried to dunk the basketball. Smacked right in the face. Referees don't call it. Like, just ridiculous.
That's crazy.
The officiating was pretty awful tonight. I'm not gonna lie, very suspect. But I think I'm sorry, but I feel like Obi Toppin deserves the MVP of the game. He really is the reason the game got flipped on its head in a good way.
I agree with that. I mean, look, this is a game where 7 boards, ties for the team lead. Obviously, led the Pacers off the bench with 19 points. Obviously in terms of reserves, but it's like just a good overall performance. And I feel like there wasn't a clear-cut MVP, so why not give Obi Toppin his shine?
And one thing I think we got to give him a lot of credit too. I was a little bit nervous about it, but he did pretty solid defensively on Sabonis.
Yeah. He
made him
really
work.
And his defense kind of comes and goes at times. Like I remember last year, he had a really good defensive, time against like Giannis, and it was like, okay, you see that, or against the Heat, he played a really
the Heat game. Jimmy Butler, he locked him up that game.
He really did, and we haven't been able to see it like consistently. But on a night like tonight, yeah, he definitely stepped up, and I just love like when Obi's getting in a rhythm and he's playing well. I just feel like it tends to carry over. So hopefully, let's just keep him in a rhythm. Good things are happening.
Yeah, and then lastly, our hustle player of the game, I think we just got to give it to Jarace Walker. He deserves an award of some sort.
I think he does deserve something. I don't think there was so much like feistiness going on, all this, but I just feel like for Jarace, like the minutes were good. The minutes were good. He was active. He had active hands. Like I said, 2 steals. He had a couple other deflections in this game. I'm more than fine with that. Jarace deserves a tip of the hat.
So those were your 4 big standout players in tonight's game, obviously. Those were your 4 leading scorers as well, and so I think that's just very fitting. T.J. McConnell had a very good game off the bench. We didn't really touch on him too much, but I thought it was a better McConnell game than what we've been seeing as of late. So good minutes from him, and really the bench was the main reason the Pacers got back into this one after they kind of struggled. So other than that, Facci, I'm just happy that we got a little pep in the step going on a Tuesday morning. So it's always a little bit better when the boys can put a W in the column and get themselves closer to home court advantage. So anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I just want to say, hey, look, let's celebrate this dub. Feels good closing out March on top. Like you mentioned, the pep on the step on a Tuesday is a real deal. You know how long these weeks get, so it helps when Tuesday's off to a good start. So I appreciate you guys listening to us on a Tuesday morning to recap this win. Great comeback win. Never count this Pacers team out, because comebacks in the month of March, it just felt like our calling card. It's what we did.
It was March Madness in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. It really was. And so I feel like your pep in the step was about as like a 6 out of 10. I need a little more energy fight. I know you're tired, but give me some pep, baby.
You brought it up before I could, so
give me your best pep in the step. I need a little bit more energy.
I mean, how about the pep in the step on
That's
a
what I need.
Tuesday morning? I mean, the air just hits a little bit different. It's just a little more crisp after a Pacers W.
That is what we need, Facci. Give us the goods. Don't hold
I
back.
got you. Hey, I got you. So,
Don't hold back.
I hope you guys enjoyed it with us, and let's just keep these good times rolling because, look, we might be off, no game on April 1st, but don't fool us. We're going to be ready on April Fools. All right? I still got a little dad humor up these sleeves on a late night pod. I got you.
Oh man, this is great. Facci's just, I pulled some more out of him that he added and he was holding back on us, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to get the best out of Facci. But with that being said, love the way the Pacers are playing. Hopefully they can keep this momentum after a big win against the Kings. Take care of business this week. Charlotte and Utah, okay? Got to take care of business. And if you want to know what Rick Carlisle said about these upcoming games, pretty great quote. We're not going to share it on here, but it's all over Twitter if you didn't hear that. So with that being said, Facci, if you're glad the Pacers got a come from behind win thanks to the clutch play of Tyrese Haliburton and Pascal Siakam, hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.